everyone. Welcome to Snowmass Village Town Council work session. And needless to say, it's always great to see people who come to listen to our conversation this evening. Our focus tonight will be on Building 6. And the purpose of tonight is for us to really try to figure out what we're going to do with Building 6. So if I take public comment, it'll be very minimal. Okay? So the history, I'll set some of the history. Building 6 came to us as a result of negotiations with Related that dealt with a variety of changes. I think where Building 10 is going. Used to be owned by the town. Is that Lot 4 or whatever it was? I have to look at Dresser. He knows this stuff like the back of his hand.
It was never
How did
owned
we
by
get
the
to where we are in terms of Building 6? Let's walk down that.
How far back do you want to go? How long do you all have?
We might really
want
want,
an abbreviated version?
yes, abbreviated version.
In the original Base Village PUD plan, there was
Mike?
Mike. I'm John.
Can you hear him?
Please don't do that.
Hello. I'm not going to yell like that. In the original PUD, there was up in the southeast corner, which is the upper part just across from the Crestwood and the Enclave, there were two lots, Lot 6 and Lot 4.
Yep.
Lot 4 was about 2/3 of an acre, and that was going to be for the Aqua Center to serve Base Village, and it was also going to be open to the public. And that public component was the community, one of the community purposes offered by the Base Village developer, original developer. Then Lot 6, which was next door, and it's right inside the curve directly across from the Enclave, was a building of about 118,000 square feet, was going to hold 90 condominium units and some lock-offs, and that was it. It was a purely residential building on that lot. That lot was roughly an acre and a half, 1.45 or something like that. And then the town, in that intervening period before Related took over, the town got the rec center built. And the rec center, the town council came to the conclusion after paying subsidies for a number of years that the rec center was underutilized and might be further underutilized with a public access aqua center in Base Village. About the same time, Related took over, bought the project from the partnership of Intrawest and Aspen Skiing Company, and approached the town to, well, there were several things that when Related closed the deal that they wanted to do. They wanted to change the phasing, and they wanted to repurpose Lot 4 to residential and have an aqua facility for the project, but they wanted to provide a different community purpose to hopefully drive some vitality into the center of Base Village. And that went on for quite some time, the discussions on what would be appropriate. And finally, Lot 6 and Lot 4 were combined into one lot, and Lot 4 ceased to exist. And that 2/3 of an acre got merged with Lot 6, and they proposed a increase in the density there. They added 20 more units. They added, I'm gonna pull this number, 5 for sale employee housing units and some other units too. So they added an employee housing component. And at the town council's suggestion, they added a commercial element down along the ski back trail, kind of in the corner where the ski back trail and the village, or the Base Village Road goes, in the corner of Wood Road. So down in that section, kind of across the street from the cul-de-sac where the corner of building 10AB, as it became known, there was a commercial element added. Eventually, the community purpose was that originally the offer from Related was a unit in building 2C. Upon looking at that, and with discovery in mind, the Ice Age discovery, it was determined not to be big enough, suitable enough. It was kind of in a back corner. I don't want to say back corner. That's not really
It was small.
descriptive. It was small, and it was in a not prominent position within the village. So after some lawsuits and discussions and a lot of things, it became Building 6. And Building 6 was changed from a retail with residential on top into a community purpose building. Not completely designed, but architecture outside structural was created with an eye towards discovery and housing Ice Age functions, exhibits. I don't want to use the word museum, but that was kind of the way it was going. And in that, the Building 9 series, which were also on that lot, were removed. Those were 3 little retail square areas with some units on top. Building 4 was re-envisioned a little bit, and that is now in construction. That's the one over there wrapped in yellow right now. That's got some high-end residential on top, and it's got basically what's going to be Skiko's retail operations in there. I think after operating for a little while at Base Village, the ski company operations realized that the spot that they had staked out in the Red Barn building and what was going to be in Building 4 was not enough. So that was re-envisioned to go there. So that's how we got to Building 6.
And I remember way back, probably October, September, we put some monetary amounts on Building 6 and all these swaps and them doing more additional, what do you call it? More units, another floor, and exchange. The value was X amount plus CAMs for 14 years.
Actually, I don't know that that's how it came down according to the documents as they were written. The Building 6 was to be finished to a certain standard with that PUD amendment, and they added $500,000. They would build it to that less than finished standard, and they would add $500,000 for finishing out tenant finishes and that kind of stuff as a community purpose, in addition to the building that was designed and is being built to that less than full completion.
And the
Design.
extra 200 that gives us a 7, didn't that come as
that
a
was-
result of an additional floor over in Building 7 and 8?
That was a community purpose for the extra height that was requested in Building 7 and 8.
Yes.
You may recall a long time
Right.
ago when third-party purchasers were looking at buying just certain lots within Base Village to do, that the original designs were deemed to be less than desirable at the market because of the height within the units. And so they needed some extra space on each floor, and that additional height is what led to that $200,000 for community purpose, the variation that was required there. So that's how you get to the 700,000 number.
Okay. So since that period of time, this was in the PUD approved December of 2015, correct?
Well, that's when the council took the action, and it took quite some time to resolve a lot of impediments to that approval. Basically, there was a 106 lawsuit which challenged a prior amendment which extended the vesting, and the council when they approved that ordinance 9 of 2015, also put a lot of conditions that needed to be satisfied before that was a final action by the town.
I remember.
And those agreements that came forth out of that conditional approval, those were actually not signed until September of 2016. In September of 2016, when those were signed, all those conditions were fulfilled, and the owner at that time was related. They had entered into a contract with the joint venture that currently owns it, but could not close that transaction until the cessation of the Rule 106 lawsuit, which by that time had been decided by the court, but had then been appealed by the plaintiff, and the appellate process was terminated in November of 2016.
Okay.
And the sale then was completed in December of 2017. And that's
In 2017 or 2016?
2016, I'm sorry. And then, well, there we are, and you've since, you want more?
What questions? Anybody having questions for John?
Well, and then there's an amendment after that which changed building 7 and 8 as well, again, which you just approved. I think it was ordinance 1 of 2018.
Okay. Okay, so then, when did we start the whole RFP process? And I guess it's,
Well, we started, I mean, the use of the building after the issues that John just brought up, we started with Snowmass Discovery. Snowmass Discovery was successful in bringing in ACES into the negotiation. And then, if you remember, we gave ACES a time period for due diligence.
Like 6 months or so.
They came back to us and said after a certain time period, they said that we can't make this work. And then I believe it was in October that September and October, we put out the RFP. The council said, okay, without ACES, let's go out and get community input on what best we can use with this building. The RFP process was what we used. And so that went out last fall, October and September. And then from that, the Nexus proposal rose to the top as the top contender from that RFP process. And that's where we are today.
okay, is everybody, any questions? Walk down history? Okay, so tonight what we wanted to do was begin to look at our strategy. What are we going to do with Building 6? One conversation is where we are with Nexus, and Clint will give us any feedback on Nexus. 2 was we have heard some rumblings about East-West may be interested. So Clint will provide us with some where we are, if there is any interest. 3 is our town taking some leadership here in terms of Building 6. And 4 is to sell the building and what that process might look like. And then 5 is other ideas that may come forward. Is that kind of what was in our memo?
That's where we're at.
That's where we are. So Clint?
So when the council last looked at the proposals, and I don't have the exact date, but say 2 weeks ago, thereabouts, you all gave staff direction to go and develop a letter of intent, or beyond that, actually, I guess, a letter of agreement with Nexus to draw up a couple of issues. With the feedback that the council had given me, we were going down a path. With the feedback we got, we actually started going down 2 paths with Nexus. One was where the council would be a stronger partner in the process, would be a member of the board, and then Nexus would go forth and as a standalone nonprofit and do the programming for the building. There was concerns about, hey, how should the town be involved, and what those level of involvements be, and so Nexus put up forth an idea saying, well, if that is a concern of the town and the council, then perhaps Nexus could go forward without the town being a member of the board. We'd still, donate essentially the building, and then they could go forth and do it. And one of the caveats or ideas that came out of that, I'll call that proposal 2 or the standalone proposal, is that they would run it for a couple of years at no cost, ongoing operating subsidy or anything, and then the council of the town could make the decision, is it working? Are they providing that vitality and activity that everybody wants? And if they were, great, we could go into a longer term agreement, and if they weren't, then so be it, and we could make that decision at that point. So at Nexus, right now where we are is what the last time we talked was, let's go ahead and get some formal ideas going, and then since that discussion, we are here today to make sure that that's the right group to be talking about. And I think the term I used in that staff report was a reset. Do we need to reset this discussion to something that the council's comfortable with? So that's a long-winded answer to. They're waiting to get some direction on how. I'm sure they're watching. I'm sure we've asked them not to be here tonight, so that you guys could give some direction to me. And it's a public meeting, of course they're going to hear it, but we wanted to make sure that this is your chance as a council to give staff some direction on how to move forward. With if I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, I thought that they were also expressed an interest in purchasing the building.
They did, and so that is something they've mentioned. You know, if I think that purchase price would be, you know, it's all contingent on that. But should the price be right, they would then own it and operate it privately. I guess that'd be proposal 3, but we didn't go down that path very far.
Okay. And I assume you all responded back to Clint's draft of the legal agreement?
Yeah, and you know, there wasn't a whole lot because it was really generic about a couple of concepts, and I think you guys were probably holding off on for tonight to say, you know, it was pretty. It was a framework at best, saying here's a couple ideas moving forward. Nexus has seen it, you all have seen it, but we affectionately refer to it as the super drafty draft because it was just that, trying to get some things on paper for discussion.
Where are you all with Nexus?
Just personally, I think we're ready for a reset. I just think that through all the discussions that we've had, all the conversations that we've had with outside parties, it always comes down to, well, how's this going to work out for the town? And how, you know, we're not going to have control over this, and we're going to, you know, how's the money going to work? And I think there's just too many questions to have an outside entity involved. I really feel strongly that the town needs to take the lead on the project. And everything that's been proposed to this point, I think, is great. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but there's no reason the town can't steer the ship. I think one of the big concerns going into this was, well, we had the Ice Age Discovery. Let's get a 501(c) so they can go out and raise the money and create this whole thing. It just didn't quite pan out the way that we hoped it would. And so I fear that if we continue going down these different paths with different groups, we're going to end up at the same point. So that's why I'm really of the mind. I think we need to take the lead and make sure this thing happens the way we want it to see it happen. And then great things can happen. I think we can really build some momentum, but we just haven't had that leadership, and I think that we need to really take that role.
Okay. So that moves into the town. You have some comments on Nexus, Alyssa? Let's close it off. Yeah,
I kind of agree with you, Bill, in regards to the reset. I'm at a point where I believe I'm really confused what Nexus is really offering. My understanding, what they tell us when they've come here before was, one thing is they want us to help steer the ship with them running it. Now, as I said before, they're going to operate this building with one checkbook, the nonprofit and the profit. I don't know how that doesn't work for me. I mean, if it's going to be a nonprofit, we need to separate from the black and the white. At this point, I'm really confused with the Nexus proposal. I'm not totally pleased with it. I like a lot of things about it. They talked about virtual reality. I mean, that's within a year, virtual reality will be somewhere else, and there'll be a new concept or new technology out. And, so I don't know how they're going to hold, I'm going to say, the valley's attention, meaning the school kids that are going to come up and you know, this is what we're talking about here. That's part of what the Ice Age Discovery Center is, and what's happening with the climate. We talked about climate control and things along this line. I just don't see where Nexus is answering all of our questions at this point. I'm not satisfied.
Is it me? Well, I mean, I think when you go back and you think about the reason we accepted the building in the first place, was for discovery. And it is very much a real place. I mean, you go on the mall and you go in there, and Stephanie's in there, and, you know, we've gotten lots of letters from all these people that are, you know, school kids. And, I mean, I think that it definitely is a live thing that's still going on, and that some of that space could be used for it. I mean, the thing that I like about Nexus is just the idea that it creates sort of this flex space, something we don't really have in Snowmass, where you could go listen to music or see a movie or do all these things. And there's really no venue like that here. And I think that's one of the things that drive people to leave Snowmass in the evening. You know, let's go into town, catch a movie, hear some jazz, do whatever we're gonna do. I mean, I think, and I mean, I do that myself. I mean, there's just not a lot to keep people here in the evening. I also think, you know, if you're in Base Village and you're standing there, even now with all the construction, and you look at the pictures of the ice skating rink and the limelight and all this stuff, I mean, you feel the vibe. I mean, through the pictures, you know what they're trying to achieve. And so the idea is to put something in there that's gonna best able to feed that vibe. And I don't know that it necessarily means that we run it or someone else runs it or we sell the building or East West takes it over. I really don't know who the right person is to put in charge, but I feel like we're all sort of in agreement of what, in a way, we want it to do. And that's kind of, I mean, and I think that's what the exciting part about Nexus was. It sort of is like opens your eyes to that it could be all of this stuff in one. And other places have done well with that. I mean, you look at that place, Temporary in Basalt, and people really like it. I mean, now, I haven't been in there yet, so I don't know exactly what's going on, but in my mind, it's kind of like creating that space. And a lot of the emails we've gotten from people, not only supportive of Discovery, but also just this idea of giving people options of stuff to do other than skiing. Because let me tell you something, thank God for that coaster this winter. I mean, we all know what the snow is like, and we need to have other options for people. You also have to respect the fact that some people sort of come here unwillingly. Their spouse likes to ski, but they don't love to ski. What else is there for them to do? And we need to be able to create that here without people going into Aspen all the time. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
I tell you, my issue with Nexus was, number one, the legal structure. The legal structure doesn't pass a smell test for a nonprofit, in that the board was to be 4 people, 2 people from our town and 2 people from Nexus, and it was the principals that in turn would have the board to turn around and develop a management agreement between the 2 entities. Well, that's called a conflict of interest, and that creates a real challenge. Then you've got unrelated business income because you had for-profit activity combined within the legal structure. So there are many legal issues, and perhaps those can be surmountable. But from the get-go, I didn't see any way the concept fulfilled a charitable mission other than it was education. And with what's happening at the IRS, there's a lot of questions around 501c3s these days. So the legal structure created some problem for me. And then I got to the point, I'm saying, well, why do we need Nexus? We can contract out a restaurant, perhaps. That assumes a town knows how to run a restaurant. 2 is, our marketing department could set up some little boxes. At the end of the day, though, I keep landing on what's the revenue stream, and is taxpayers willing, are they willing to fund this project in the long term? because we hear enough about the rec center. So I'm stuck between the town starting and the sale of the building. That's where I am. Where are you?
I'm right in the middle there with you. Just as I said, I'm a little confused with the whole Nexus program. They basically want us to help feed them the information for programs that they want to run.
Yeah.
Well, if we're going to do that, why can't our marketing department do it then? You know, as opposed to,
And the difference is, just on that point, with whether execution or not, their proposal was there'd be no ongoing subsidy from the town to do it. And if the town's marketing department's doing it, then by definition, we're gonna be paying for it. That's the fundamental difference.
but, you know, for us to start off with $700,000, they say 200 for that will be set up for them.
Yep.
The other $500,000 is going to be there, and then they're going to reap the benefit of the CAM for 14 years as well. That's some pretty good funding right there.
Yes.
Then the other big point is, if it doesn't work out for Nexus, we're stuck. The town is stuck. We don't, you know, they could walk away from it. What guarantees do we have? If they become the nonprofit, they're gonna walk away from it. Then we're stuck again in a year and a half from now, or 2 years from now, 3 years from now, whatever it is. Whether, you know, if the economy takes a dive again, if we see another big recession like we saw in the world, whatever, I'm not even gonna think about that, but there's just so many unknowns. I think, you know, you asked me how I feel, that's it. I'm right in the middle there, and can we sell the building, rezone it, and sell the building? I don't think the town does well as being a landlord. I mean, I don't know, what do we own now? We own the Little Red Schoolhouse, right? And we own the rec center. So I don't think we should take on, I don't think the taxpayers want to take on more responsibility that could put the town more in debt, is how I feel.
Well, there's a philosophical question we probably ought to put out there. Philosophical question is, okay, so we have this thing called Building 6. The question is, and I'm not raising this just from me, from people who I have talked with, some pro, some con. The fundamental question is, does the town belong owning a building in the midst of a development and running it? That's the question. And to that end, should you not sell it, take the money, and do a building somewhere else to house a Discovery Center, Arts Theater, or what have you, or employee housing? That's what I'm hearing out in the community. So that, to me, the question that I've been trying to struggle with is, should we as a town own a building in the middle of a development project?
Yes.
You're a yes.
I'm gonna say no. I mean, it's just, I'm gonna say no, that's all.
Well, I'll tell you why. I mean, municipalities have buildings. That's part of what we do. And I think it's important to talk about the dollars and cents of it, because that seems to be where we get stuck all the time. You know, if this group is gonna take on the financial liability, what's the situation gonna be? All right, so we're already committed to $70,000 a year for Clint's memo to run the Discovery Center. So if we choose to put that on, say, the ground level of Building 6, we know we can transfer those dollars from the mall to the base village, right? So there's $70,000. We know we've got Holy Cross Electric, which are earmarked for education. Those dollars should be available to us going forward at about $100,000 a year, give or take, right?
It's about that, isn't it?
It's close.
Right.
Yeah.
So now we're at $170,000. I mean, what do we think the operating capacity of this building is going to be? So let's keep going, right? We have a tourism department that has a pretty substantial bank, and we do a really good job of providing physical activities in our town. Tough Mudder, volleyball tournaments. You know, there's some great activities that take place in this town, but to Alyssa's point, what are we doing for those people who aren't super athletic? What are we doing to invest in the intellectual capacity of our community? I mean, we've got Thursday night concerts. I'm a big fan of music. I think that's a great way to go. But what else are we doing? I mean, I think the Aspen ideal, mind, body, spirit, really needs to be considered when we're talking about promoting our town and increasing tourism.
So what I've heard is I've got 170,000, right?
Yep.
That doesn't include utilities.
Well, Bill's identified some potential revenue sources,
Right.
but there's no expenses to the town for 14 years.
Wait a minute, I thought Pat wrote us and said that,
And I've checked with the owners, and they're double checking and triple checking, but they've told me twice now that no, that is not what Pat has written is not accurate, and Ms. Kiefer's written is not accurate, and then they are triple checking for me right now. But no, at this point, I am operating with, from what I've heard from East-West Partnership, that there will be no utilities, no CAMs, that it's 14 years. So that expense-free.
how would you see the kitchen going? I mean, there's a kitchen that's about $500,000.
At least, yeah, right in there. I mean, I think this is where, I think, I mean, for me, if you're asking me what I'd love to have happen, I would love to get some direction from you on what you're looking for, because all the options that were listed out are all available, and there's nothing in my mind that says some combination of that can't happen. And I've said it before, and I think I'll say it again, at the risk of being repetitive, I don't think the town runs a risk for 10 years. And if you guys said, hey, let's go and experiment, let's go find some things out, let's figure out what these partnerships can look like. If we don't like the partnerships we got now because they're nerve-wracking or they're not there, great. Let's keep doing that, but let's figure some other things out. We haven't touched on East-West. I keep calling it East-West Partnership, but that venture. It's my understanding that later on this week, we're going to get a revised proposal from them about bringing back their Village Hall concept. And if you remember that came through the RFP. It was kind of a game roomish kind of thing on the bottom, restaurant on the top with a flex space. And that flex space could be lots of the things that Alyssa mentioned or whatnot. I think there's opportunities for us to continue to work through and find these things if there's a tolerance for that risk. And I don't want to take that risk down. It is absolutely there, but I don't think it exists for some time. And I didn't bring it with me, but I kind of harken back to that goal the council set 2 years ago that said, create a, whatever, it was kind of create that community space. And I think this has that potential. And I think it's going to be up to us being staff and the council to manage that risk and make sure we're not taking undue risks, but taking those appropriate risks that could help us reach that goal. And so between the kind of the Nexus idea, which may or may not be possible with a partnership between the town hall, or they call it Village Hall, I think is what their proposal called it,
Yes, Village
idea, and some town staff working together, I think we might have an opportunity, but it's going to take some flexibility from us and some commitment from us, and I will say it, there is going to be risk for sure, but that's the nature of doing stuff.
I see it as high risk.
Yeah, and that's where I need to defer to you all and say, is the risk worth it? Do you want to make the pitch? I think we could do it. I think there's an opportunity, but you all need to be comfortable with that
And we
risk.
have no confidence in any numbers yet about whether or not the town could do it. If the town took ownership, you've got a kitchen to build out, we'd have to find a partner from a restaurant.
Yes.
And if you're charging the 8% lease rate, what's your payback period for the $500,000 for a kitchen? I haven't done the math on that one.
I mean, it depends on the revenue. I mean, it depends. All these kinds of things, I can't answer it. It's really going to depend on you guys saying, I think you asked the right philosophical question. Should the town do something with this building? And I can argue it both ways because I hear lots, and I think there's lots of, this is one of those really tough decisions before council that there's rights on both sides. But I would say, towns do own museums. Towns do own buildings on main streets that be that anchor of, be that anchor, and they work, and there's risks. But I could also say, you know what? If you could sell it, fine. Do something different someplace else. But I'm not sure that you can get that full value of what that building's cost to build if you sold it, because of the zoning, because of all the other infrastructure
Well,
needs that would be
speaking of
required.
that, if we were to sell it, what all has to happen in order to sell it? Zoning and,
Well, I mean, and John and I talked about this philosophically. I mean, there's a couple of different ways to do it, but I mean, you put it on the market, and the question is, do you put it on the market, get a proposal, see if you want that, have the sale be contingent on the uses being allowed zoning-wise, retail uses versus restaurant uses versus whatever else. Those all have different demands for housing, for
Right.
parking, for all those types of issues. So we'd have to work through that. Or do you change the zoning and say, here's what we want to have happen there, and hope someone could fill the zoning later? Then you at least know what it's zoned for, and you could control the use that way. And there's probably 12 other approaches to that, but those would be two ideas if you wanted to go that path. And you'd have to make the decision. How strict are you going to be in holding the town accountable for the parking requirements and the housing requirements and what other kind of impacts? I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But I mean, that's an option. And then I'd ask the question, and then what do you do if you sold it on day one for whatever the amount is you hoped for? Then what do we do with that? Do we construct someplace else? And if you do, then you're kind of back into this, all right, we're operating a building and we're doing all those kind of things again. And our eyes would need to be wide open to that, because unless you gave it to somebody else, I guess. But I mean, I think it's knowing that circular loop that I just talked through. I think it really comes down to the council saying, hey, here's kind of what we think we want to try out. And I get a level of confidence knowing that I personally don't think the big risks happen for a number of years, and it's a chance to take that try.
well, it's the long term. 12 years from now comes pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, and I'd say 10 personally, but I think I put that in some of my memos. Is I think by year 10, the council, whoever's on the council, then need to be saying, where are we at? Is this working or not? And that would give 4 years to, do something different.
I would be supportive of a town concept as long as there's no impact to any taxpayer in this town for property taxes.
And that's the kind of criteria. If you guys can come up with that criteria, then let us work towards that and put some things in place.
People in our town cannot stomach more property tax. We got the school tax last year, and then we got the fire department and the water.
But we're not talking about adding any taxes.
Well, I'm not done yet.
Okay.
You got the RAFTA tax, it's gonna be a ballot issue this year coming on as well, and that more than likely will pass. So the point is, there's a lot of intolerance for more taxes. And not to, yes?
I just remind you that all those taxes are voted on by the people. And if you wanted to add a property tax to support this community purpose, the town would have to go and ask them as well. So now you can shift that a little bit and say the town levels property taxes, and the town council, have the right to allocate that. So if you're talking about using existing property taxes and allocating them, that might be what you're talking about. And with the potential RTD tax, the people will have a vote. So, I mean, we can go back and look at the numbers on these questions, and I think you'll find that the three big ones that have been very recent have been voted on fairly strongly in the affirmative. And I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but you're not putting those taxes on them.
No, but the point is, John,
They're accepting
what we're
it.
hearing, at least what I'm hearing from our people within the community, their taxes continue to go up. And many are on fixed incomes. So the point is, I think we have to be very sensitive to how are we gonna pay for this? How are you gonna handle the deficits?
Agreed.
Because out of the box, it's not gonna make money the first year.
Well, and I think, philosophically, you'd have to say, do you really want it to make money or just cover its own expenses? I mean, those are some
Cover your own
detailed
expenses,
questions.
with probably a little small for the rainy day.
Right.
I was just gonna mention, November 2018 is coming right up. I know, not like we don't have a gun on our head about this whole building to begin with, but in the same token, 2018, the building's gonna be what? Is it just gonna be turned over to us, and then we have to finish it? So we're really not gonna be open for whatever it's going to be, if even that by March of 2019, we'd be lucky we're open.
I think that's right.
I'm being realistic here.
What's obligated to be delivered to us is a white box on November 1st.
And that's
so-
gonna be delivered 2018 November.
Correct.
Meaning whoever's gonna get in there and whatever we decide, or the community decides, whoever decides on what this building is going to be on a community purpose, whether it's Discovery, whether it's Nexus, it's going to be several more months before there's gonna be any vitality or any type of vibrancy going on that's gonna help that plaza.
Correct.
So,
I have a question there. That wasn't my understanding. My understanding was that if we had a nonprofit or whatever, they could go ahead and start the renovation within the building to be ready to open by November
well,
1st.
that would be a question.
That's not what I'm hearing.
I don't think that's true, because
The East-West, to their credit, is collaborative. So if there was an option, if we knew who had this and who's doing it, I'm sure they would do the best they can. But what's they're obligated to deliver to us on November 1st
Right, as a box.
is that white box. And then, so if we knew we wanted a kitchen in there and we knew who the kitchen operator was, or as an example, we could start that earlier, I'm sure. But if we don't know for some time, I think Councilman Good's observation is right on. We need to be cognizant that they're obligated to white box.
At
and
this
we'll
point,
get it better.
we don't have a tenant, we haven't made a decision. So, as I said, we're gonna wind up with the shell in November 2018, and then if we have that decision, if it's not the contractor or the developer now, they're not, I don't think this contractor or developer is gonna allow another contractor to come in and do that building until they're done with it.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that. They have been very flexible, and we've got some opportunity. When it is delivered to us, there will be a CO on the building, certificate of occupation, so we can use it. And so one of the things that, if you remember, in the Nexus proposal was they call them pop-ups, and events that can be in there that are low-key but show activity. And so if it was a criteria you wanted to add, we can say, it needs to be ramped up as soon as possible. Whoever said it, I think maybe John and I talked about it earlier today. If the idea was we want to keep Ice Age Discovery and we wanted to switch spots from the mall to this, those are things that we could ramp up with. It's going to take more discussion. It's going to take more buy-off. It's going to take a lot of input still. But there are some things that I'm confident in saying we can ramp up with on a low key. But your observation is 100% right. And I want to reiterate it. It can't be full bore on November 1st. And
Right.
depending on what goes in there is how long it's going to take to build out.
Well, we need to make a decision before November 1st.
And if you don't, it's going to be a beautiful building. You can turn the lights on, and it's way better than a blue fence. And so before everybody gets nervous, I think you guys have made really good observation. We've made progress, and I think, I'm an optimist. And where we were 2 years ago was a blue wall there. And in November, it's going to be a building. And I don't want to rush into a decision if you're not comfortable with it. That's all. I don't think that there's no bills due for 14 years. And so I think the council's got some time if you're not comfortable with what's going on. That's all. I just don't want to rush something in that you're not
So
comfortable
Clint, you have another RFP coming from East-West, or
So
some other ideas?
I think that it's going to be a proposal, as I understand it.
Similar to what they presented way back when with the
Yeah,
village.
and so they were in the original RFPs back in
Right.
September, October,
Yes.
and they've indicated they're going to kind of beef that up a little bit with a little bit more detail potentially, a few more ideas, and we're expecting to get that later this week.
And that was a 501c3.
My guess is that's the stuff they're trying to work through
Yes.
now. And I've talked to Nexus about it and said, listen, they're the front runners. Here it is. We had this discussion last week after last Monday's council meeting. the word that we used was kind of, reset. They don't want to waste their time, but I want to say for them, they are still very interested, and they've got their original proposal. They were crafting that second proposal, trying to be responsive to what the council said, so I don't want to discount it. And I think if you guys could give us some criteria that you're looking for, I think we got a good group of people we can work with and see what can happen there. But it's going to take a level of comfort from you guys and to keep going.
I think the intricacies of the deals it's just we're gonna keep kicking the can down the road. I mean, if we want this thing to be open and operational, we need to take control of it.
I'm very interested in listening to East West again. It's in their best interest to get it up, and if they have something interesting, I'd love to listen to it.
But they don't wanna buy the building.
We don't know.
I'm pretty comfortable. I mean, I had not seen the proposal. It's been talked to me about different ideas, but no, they think that they're looking to use the building, at something similar to Nexus at $1 a year, and then invest in it and, get whatever, finishes in there. But no, to my knowledge, they're not gonna ask to buy the building right now.
Yeah, I pulled up their original concept over the weekend, and it was a formation of a 501c3 that the town would have an opportunity to be part of, community members that would really run the program. And it had concepts of small rooms that would
So-
pop up, and
It appears to me that, talking about their pop-ups, meaning Nexus or whoever
yeah.
is in there, whether it's marketing or tourism, the most important thing that I see happening that can happen before November 1st is making a decision on what we want as a kitchen. Whoever we get to run that kitchen, it's gonna be a snack bar, it's gonna be a coffee shop. It's been talked about for the last couple of years. That's probably the biggest decision. What we need to do is where we're gonna put the grill, what exhaust fans we need, what makeup air we need. Those are the things that need to, then if we get the vendor that come in, say, oh, great, I'm gonna take over this brand-new kitchen, maybe we could get some professional help to tell us how to lay out a kitchen for the restaurant space. And then I think we could bring, if the town decides to keep it, and then we're going to operate it, we're then gonna be in charge of who we're going to lease that kitchen to. So whether we pay a professional to come in and say, okay, this is what we need. You need the range or cooktop here, we need the exhaust, the makeup air. This is gonna be the seating area, this is gonna be the salad area, whatever it takes, coffee machine. I think that's the most important thing mechanically that has to happen before the drywall goes on. That kitchen almost has to be in place.
Well,
And the timing we're working with on them is we don't want I guess the framework we're working with them is we don't want to put up drywall that will then get ripped out by something else. So they're putting up the least amount of any of those materials, drywall, studs, walls,
So
anything.
in the lower floors, we have 2 bathrooms. Don't we have 2 public restrooms in the bottom
I think we
floor?
have a men's and a women's, and I don't know how many
Right, so
holes there
there's
are.
some mechanical that's happening in the building.
Oh, sure.
Right, so, but what are they doing mechanically for the kitchen area? Anything for the restaurant area?
The vents are being put in to allow for a hood. So they've sized it all. They understand, and I'm out of my league on this, but 2,000 CFM, does that sound right?
Well, I mean, grease traps, floor sinks,
Yep. So
all that stuff.
if you remember, the council gave direction, make it up, 6 months ago or longer, that said, no, this building needs to have more than a warming kitchen.
Yes.
When this was originally conceived, it was kind of that warming kitchen. Starbucks was always talked about, and you guys said, you know what? That's not enough. We need to have more. And so those provisions for grease traps and hoods are there.
They are there,
But
for hoods, but not like a triple compartment sink here, a hand washing
Correct.
sink over there.
And so that's what the idea is. Once we know who we want to put in there, the space is there, the opportunity is there, but that final design is.
Well, the thing is, though, the people who we want in there don't own the building. They're going to be leasing the space, whether it's a percentage of their gross or whatever. So I think we don't need to wait for whoever we have to put in there. I think we just need to make a decision on what we want our kitchen to be.
Well, if we want to own a kitchen,
If we want to own a kitchen. Right now, we do own the space for a kitchen. So we probably need to move forward and design the kitchen
well,
and to
or
figure out whether we're going to sell the building or sell the kitchen.
And we've done initial layouts there. I mean, East West was
Yeah.
part of this design and construction. They brought in a consultant, and said, okay, here's a rough layout. And we've got that roughly 300 square feet at the time. It was laid out, said, okay, here's how it could fit. Here's the air things, or the vents that could, clear everything out. Since then, if you recall, then that space over the stairway was closed over
Right.
to allow for even a larger kitchen,
Yes.
Right.
should that be needed. But that's providing flexibility. It can either be seating, it could be anything, but that space provides flexibility for a larger kitchen should that be necessary. And because we don't know what that end is, we haven't made those decisions yet, because we're trying to figure out, well, what are we building to? And that's how we are where we are.
well, it seems as though we've got two paths that are going down. One is, haven't seen a proposal, East-West Concept Village. They're 501c3, which was way back when. I don't know if that's still what they're thinking about. That's one path. The other path is the town do it ourselves. And, if you will, figure out who the vendor's gonna be and build out a kitchen.
Well, again,
And then
I
the
do-
three is to sell the
I
darn
do
thing.
feel like, we're not selling the kitchen to anybody. Whoever takes the kitchen over is going to be either leasing it from us or Nexus or East West or whoever. So in order to keep the ball moving, so no drywall has to come off, I think the consultants, if East West has helped with that, I think we need to pursue what's happening with the kitchen
Well,
layout.
we might wanna try to figure out what kind of I think it's where carts are before the horse, because we don't know exactly what types of restaurants are going all in Base Village, and you don't want to have 5 burger joints.
Yeah, and I think it's even broader than that. If there's a level of comfort that we want to use a kind of a village hall and combine that with, and I'm going to just say Nexus and Discovery, because those seem to be the three that are rising to the top. And if you said, figure out if there's a way to make this thing work, the rough concept that's been used over and over is the revenues from this restaurant would be used to offset any ongoing operating costs. And the fundamental operating cost the town's going to be responsible in 14 years as the owner is that CAM. And then, of course, depending on movies or plays or whatever else goes on there might be other operating costs.
What type of cams are we really talking about per year?
The rough number, they don't know yet, but the rough number is 10,000 a month, 120,000 a year.
Whoa.
So in that, Kim, would that also contribute to Hayden and Capitol Peak's snow melt fee that they're paying in the Skittles and all that? Would that be part of it?
I get dangerous when I talk about the Metro District versus 1 versus 2 versus who pays for all of what.
Yeah.
But
Pat Kiefer just sent an email, and she said that each Capitol Peak residential owner pays the Master Association CAMs of $3 per square foot. In addition, Capitol Peak HOA is separately billed for BV central plant utilities.
yeah, and I understand
just-
that, and that's.
She's obviously watching or
Right.
listening. Hi, Pat.
And I'm not-
Pat's always watching.
I'm not, I can just tell you, I know that's Pat's position. I know East West has told me something different. I don't have the right answer right now. I don't have but those are the things we're working through.
But I think as far as the kitchen goes, I've talked to some people who are really interested in taking that space.
Mm-hmm.
Peter and Elise from Gwentai Alpine they're nervous. They've never done a restaurant themselves, but I think that's in the spirit of what we should be doing with this building. I mean, similar to our employee housing program, we should have an employee commercial program, and we should be providing locals who spent years in restaurants the opportunity to get started in a restaurant. I think it would be a great opportunity. I think more people would come forward if they thought it was realistic for them to be able to operate a restaurant. And we're at that point now. It's like we're going to have a restaurant upstairs. We're going to have a flex space, and then let's decide what's going in downstairs. Personally, the building was built for our Ice Age find. And thank you to all the supporters of our Discovery Center that are here tonight. But I mean, it's important to this community. Like, these people commit their lives to it. And, you know, they've been a little hesitant to speak up because some of them work for the town, so they can't be real vocal about it. But, I mean, this is a real community asset, and this building was designed to house this find. To me, that's going to be the only thing that, that is going to be the critical factor in this building. In fact, I can tell you right now, if the Discovery Center is not involved with the building, I won't vote for it.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Okay, that's fine. I mean, cart before the horse. I'd love to see what's going to come in from east-west and have the town do some pro forma. Pat just sent $229,000,
I just saw it.
yeah, in central plant expenses over and above the $3 per square foot cams paid by each BV residential owner.
Again, those are the things that we can work through. I know I've gotten two different answers from two different people, and I can't.
We
sit
just
here.
need to get some numbers, if the town's gonna take it or what have you.
But I think when we're talking about it and we're talking about the town taking it over, because it's always going to come down to the dollars and cents. So you look at the budget. Okay, we've got $70,000 budgeted to shift, you know, our marketing and our staff around here. If we don't have to make that shift and we can put those dollars towards, you know, offices over at the new Building 6, where we can have like a real welcome center. How many people come to Snowmass and they're like, well, I'm not sure where to go. I mean, my friends from Aspen come to Snowmass. They don't know what to do here. I mean, what if we had like, and the Ice Age Discovery Center becomes the de facto
It is,
information
it has the
desk.
eye on the door.
I mean,
Yeah.
these folks talk to
Yeah,
everybody
everybody.
that come into
Right,
town.
right.
And so, I mean, if we had a real info center that also worked as a discovery center, I think that is money well spent.
Okay.
I would welcome if you, I know you don't want public comment.
Well, I'm gonna get some in a minute.
Okay, but I just don't want any redundancy on, you know, as we spoke earlier, you know, we've gotten the emails and
We're coming in right now.
you know, they're coming in as we speak. And at any rate, I'd like to hear something different if somebody's got something different than what's already been out there, that's all. Because it is the community's building, it's community purpose, and it's not just the four of us. I don't feel, or five of us have to make that decision when I think you see somebody in the post office and they're gonna say, what bonehead decided to do this, you know, and whatever, and I just don't, I wanna be responsible enough for the community, that's all.
You just gotta step.
Yeah, we probably have an equal number of pros versus cons.
Boneheads on each side.
Yeah, boneheads on each side.
But you know, I think we should also keep in mind, ACES didn't say they didn't want to be involved. They just said they didn't want to take the lead. So
That
there's
is
a
true.
lot that ACES can bring to the party. And Nexus and Aspen Science Center and Aspen Film said they already wanted to be involved. Anderson Ranch, the music festival. I mean, there's a lot of amazing organizations in this town that we just need to tap into.
We have.
And yeah, but
They haven't
no
come
one,
forward.
but
No.
they don't want to take the lead.
Their issue is, the consistent theme is a capital campaign. And the reason why Nexus didn't, or not Nexus, ACES didn't want to take the lead is because of the $6 million, or whatever the number was.
They said 10,
They,
but yeah.
yeah, they didn't have the capacity. The board wasn't willing to take it on, and which is the similar story to Snowmass Discovery, Ice Age Discovery, is the capital campaign aspect.
Well, and for that, I mean, I'm just trying to develop some criteria, and then no new taxes I got. One of the criteria could be, how do we ramp this up so that investment is more tolerable, is more doable?
Right.
And if we can figure out a way to, whether it's pop-ups or whatever, or we get an initial investment from one person, and if that would be something that would helpful
Mm-hmm.
you guys, we can do that and help work to develop that.
The reason why the 501c3 seems to work better than the town acting like a 501c3 is a 501c3 really has the capacity to go out and raise money to help build out, like if it was a Discovery Center or even Nexus or what have you. People are not gonna give money to the town. So that's one argument for a 501c3, which is what we had all hoped.
Right, and that's where we thought we were going. We hoped we were going
Yeah.
down that path, but we just can't quite get there. But, you know, if we give Snowmass Discovery a home, and they're able to ramp up their fundraising capacity because they have a home, it doesn't mean they can't come back to us and buy the building. They might just take it off our hands. But I think once we give them the fundraising capacity through a home in Snowmass, you know, that's where they get started. They've had fits and starts trying to get started because they haven't had the support of the town.
Oh, well, I'm not sure that's true.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, Snowmass Discovery came in front of us numerous times and they were berated. I mean, they got beaten down to the point where they're like, we're not sure what to do here.
I don't even know who's running, what has happened to the board. That, there was confusion over what's the board and what is the town running. I mean, there's a lot of confusion.
I mean, just in the 1 minute version of that is Snowmass Discovery is a standalone nonprofit with a board.
Right,
Ice Age Discovery, the
Is our
facility in the
town.
mall, is operated
by the town.
by the town. There's one employee, Stephanie, I think I heard her voice
Right,
behind
right.
me. There's that is an employee of Snowmass Discovery, but the town makes a donation to Snowmass Discovery for her salary. So, I mean, I think it's fair to say the vast majority of the operating cost for that facility is paid for by the town. And I mean, if I was gonna make Bill's pitch, hence, we're already doing it, maybe you do it, I mean, if there was this pop-up idea, if there was something that ramp up, do we do it someplace different? The question I would ask you guys, being the news guy here, is would that be okay with the mall? I mean, moving that operation from the mall to Base Village, I don't know how that would be perceived. I'd look to you all to give me feedback on
I
that.
don't think it'd be a big, the question is, can we get out of the lease?
Yeah, it's a 1 year lease. They wouldn't give us longer than a 1 year, so it's either October or November this year that it's up.
Okay.
October.
Helpful. We're gonna take some comments. Anybody wanting to make a comment? Yeah, come on up. Okay. I wasn't gonna ask you what happened to your neck, but.
Thank you.
Okay, Jay,
Gotta get really close to the microphone.
gotta get close to the
Okay.
mic.
I need one of those for the clerk, please. Oh, you got it. That's fine.
Oh, yeah, he did, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, Jay.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry if I'm a little bit new to the game and probably saying things you've heard, but these are my thoughts anyway. And I've been here for 4 years now. I'm just catching up. I live here about 9 months of the year. So my thought is this: who knows how valuable the discovery of those extinct giants will be to the generations of kids that are coming up. A few weeks ago, I stepped into a conversation between Stephanie and a curious 10-year-old. I noticed that the child's mild reaction seemed rather polite when Stephanie told him that snowy mammoths were 14 feet tall. So I pointed to the second-story handrail across the mall and said, "That's 14 feet." And the boy and his mother looked out the window, and together they said, "Wow, that's huge." So that was the moment that I knew that if we had some full-size models, we could quantum jump the interest in our local Discovery Center, probably generate a ton of interest in the new Base Village housing, too. I might also say that, well, to continue the point, to paraphrase Mark Twain, the difference between a lecture and a full-size mastodon is the difference between a lightning bug and lightning. Now, I think it would be something you might consider as listening to the conversation that music halls are noisy and the plaza is surrounded by housing. And they don't stop at 9:30 at night either. Now, that 10-year-old we talked about is now the kid's hooked. Next year he'll ask, what does extinction mean, and what causes extinction? And later he'll learn that global extinctions are accelerating even today. So in this way, the world will have one more thoughtful citizen. Can anybody think of a bigger theme for our resort than Discovery Snowmass? How about we sponsor artful mastodon sculptures in our roundabouts, built like those deer at the rodeo roundabout, and dramatic snowy mammoth models on the plaza outside Building 6, and exciting anatomically correct models at a Discovery Museum in the heart of the new base village. Models cost in the range of $50,000 each, which isn't a fortune. Could anybody deny that a collection of enormous mock-ups coupled with a better understanding of the continuum of life, past to future, would attract an appreciative and even international audience? And can anybody think of a more appropriate setting in time and place than our valley, or a deeper effort and a stronger draw to the restaurant shops and new housing in the base village? Or that such an exciting effort would appeal to patrons with interests in science and education? Imagine for a moment the base village without a meaningful heart or core attraction, but rather just another rental shop, restaurant, or empty hall. Environmental awareness will become a global theme by the time that 10-year-old reaches maturity. We certainly should do our part to make it so.
Thank you very much, Jay. Dave, I think I saw, yeah. Dave?
John, just a question for you. If Snowmass Discovery, as the town-run facility, was in Building 6, could the 501(c)(3) still operate within that? So if we said, okay, you guys raise all the money to produce the exhibits, is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where we've been before. Okay, Dave?
Thank you for giving me a moment here. I had been on the, well, first of all, Snowmass is always looking for a way to differentiate ourselves from other resorts and something really special. I think we have something really special here. I had just been on the water board when the discovery was made at Ziegler Pond, so I called the Denver Museum, invited all the scientists up for $35 a night in a 2-bedroom condo, put all 55 of the diggers up that whole fall, and then that winter I put a tripod in our lobby with a big poster board with personal pictures of the dig. Kirk Johnson was nice enough to get us up there where we could actually see him pulling the mammoth out. Anyway, people flocked to the pictures. The parents, the kids, everybody was so interested. It was amazing. So that made me believe this is really something that our winter guests would love. Our summer guests are looking for things to do. I'm sure they would love it. And so I think that Stephanie and Snowmass Discovery have done a good job with our 2,000 square feet in the mall with an 8-foot ceiling.
Right.
I think if we had 5,000 feet, say, in Building 6 with a 12-foot ceiling, it would exponentially increase the impact that good displays could be done. And like Jay said, it has to be impactful. Whatever goes in there, if it's going to work, it has to attract people, catch their eyes. I think the space could still work. And so I think it's an opportunity. I think the last point I would make is we have in Dr. Kirk Johnson, who's director of the Smithsonian Museum for Nature and Science in Washington, D.C., as personally invested and a strong advocate. I mean, he was at TOV for 6 weeks living here, nurturing this. We have Dr. Ian Miller, who's curator of the Denver Museum of Science and Nature and Science, who is equally invested. And I mean, what more could we ask for in terms of national reach if we were able to pull off a way to make this a segment or a component of what Snowmass Village is and how special we really are. I really think it's worth community support. And you know, it's been a long time since I was on town council, and I've sat in your shoes, and I know how hard it is with people pulling on you from a dozen different directions. But I think this opportunity really warrants support.
So Dave, let me ask you this. We're talking about, it sounds as though I'm very much against the discovery, which is totally not true. I'm very supportive of it. The point is, the concept could work whether it's east-west village nonprofit or the town owns and Snowmass Discovery it's an operating 501c3. They can continue to raise the money. What hasn't happened is not a dollar has been raised that I know of. So the point is, that's the question, but you could work with Snowmass Discovery, whether it be an east-west or a town. It's basically going to be the same difference. You could have a nonprofit within a nonprofit. That's not important.
And to a point Billy made earlier, I think there are donors out there that really would come forward if they had a solid thing to tie into. It's just hard to write a check unless there's a concrete foundation.
You got to have a building.
I have a question, David, and it might be for Stephanie as well. Several weeks ago, Easter weekend, I was down in Denver with my wife. I went to the museum. We haven't done that in a while, and saw IMAX and everything, but I was looking for the bones, looking for some type of display. What happened? Not a thing. Then I talked to the guys behind the counter who were, dusting plaster molds and stuff off, and what happened to the bones of Snowmass? He goes, I'm not sure. I think they're down in storage.
That's right. That's where they are.
So it almost seems to me that we're being held back. The Discovery Center is not only being held back by, if you want to call it being held back by the community, it's being held back by the museum. Why can't we have them display something and have, by the way, there's more up in Snowmass that's happening. And like I said, this might be a question for Stephanie. So I was really looking forward to seeing what they had on display. If anything, because every night I would leave the Snowmass Club and go over and see what was on display on the tables at the Water and Sand. And I loved it, just to see what was new every single day, what they would dig up. So I was disappointed in the Denver Museum for not even having anything.
There's nothing there.
There's nothing there.
They used to have the buffalo horns right at the top of the elevator on the second floor there, a beautiful display. You were captive. You saw it as you got up to the site.
But I don't know what they're waiting for. I mean, if the Discovery Center needs that boost or the shot in the back to get moving, I think that we need to get the Denver Museum moving as well to help advocate this program.
The Denver Museum has a seat on the Snowmass Discovery Board.
Well, I don't, whatever, but I was disappointed thinking I was going to the museum. I've been there a long time. And I was looking forward to seeing what they had on display, and they had nothing.
I was there last summer. Obviously they had the mastodon out front, the gigantic statue. And then underneath the stairs, they had the bones going last summer. And then on top of the stairs, and I can't remember which exhibit it was, you walk through time, and at the end of it is the mastodons. And so I don't know, they might have changed it, but I know when I was personally.
Well, that's still there, but it doesn't even mention Snowmass and what has been, when I saw last week, 2 weekends ago.
And I've slept since then, so I don't remember exactly, but I know that it was there for sure.
But anyway, my point is, I think the Discovery Center needs to, they need to ask for some help from the Denver Museum. I don't know how it all works, Stephanie, but somehow or another, I think somebody needs a shot.
Stephanie, come on. Tell us how it works.
Tell us how it works. Thank you, David.
And I'm going to move, because We want to make sure we come out of here with some direction. Okay, Stephanie.
Okay, well, thanks for allowing me to speak. So to answer your question about the bones, one of the really cool things about our discovery is that none of our fossils turned to stone. I don't know if you guys realize that. So we were finding leaves that were still green, bones that were still white, some were stained brown by the sediment, beetles with iridescent wings, snail shell with color in it. So it's not entirely unheard of with things that are young and ice age type fossils. It can happen that it hasn't turned to stone, but the preservation was just really, really special with our fossils. So they have to be stored in very special climate-controlled cases. It's just the nature of how they are. I have an actual toe bone from the dig on my desk.
Okay, let's.
Where to come in?
The question is answered, Tom.
Yeah, so that toe bone, it's out in open air, and I have it for education purposes so people can touch it, but it's getting cracks all the time. I have to constantly look at it, glue it, so they're difficult to display. They have to be displayed under glass.
We'll never have any kind of realistic bones that came out of the lake on display up
Our
here.
original hope was to be able to bring them back. They'd have to be displayed under glass, so it wouldn't be those like big,
No,
full
I
skeletons.
got that. I understand.
But that's the case. But, you know, the Denver Museum, they have their own curatorial staff. They have their own research interests. So while this is a really incredibly important scientific find, they're also looking for dinosaurs. They're looking for things all over the country. And so we can be a footnote in their amazing collection, or we can highlight this discovery here in Snowmass, where it gets the place of honor that it deserves, because it's really a special, amazing, significant site. And I get people all summer long coming up to me and saying, I drove here because I saw the Nova special, or I read about it in the news back in the day, and I want to see where this happened. So I really think that this is where that story should be told and highlighted. And yeah, I wish the Denver Museum displayed more. They have to also reconfigure their exhibit hall to be able to properly store and display these bones, so that'll take a little time on their end. But I think this is a unique opportunity for us to highlight this amazing find that belongs to our community.
So let's talk about that mastodon that was guaranteed to come back to Snowmass.
Yeah, that's a gift from the Denver Museum. It's a full-sized mastodon. In fact, the largest mastodon ever found, also found here. His name is Portaloo. And that's currently being made right now by Rob Gaston of Gaston Design in Fruta. And when that's done, he hasn't given me a specific estimate, but it should be about as large as the one in Denver that they have outside. So 12 to 15 feet tall, full-sized mastodon, free of cost to the town.
Well, it's
And
to
did you
the
hear
water
more?
district.
Yeah, it's to the, yeah, you're right,
The
the
Water and
Department of
Sand
Water and
District.
Sand.
It's not the department, they're their own government.
Right, that's
So
right.
it's their mastodon, and they get to choose where to place it. And we've been in contact with them and whatnot, but it's just to be clear, it's not to the town, it's to the water.
Another
Thank you for
sculpture
Sorry.
correcting me. No, I appreciate that.
So the plan was that was going to go in Building 6. And now that we've closed that floor off,
It's still, we don't know the height. We haven't checked into this for months, probably 2 months. But the last we checked into it 2 months ago, we couldn't get a height. And we don't know exactly, if it's less than 14 feet, then we could probably fit it on the top floor by the, where you walk in the front door by the, where the roof comes down, ceiling comes down. If it's 18 feet, no, you're right. But since we don't know the heights, we can't absolutely say where it's
Middle
gonna
of the
fit.
ice skating rink.
that's a great idea. Well, the point is, we're getting off kind of topic, but it's kind of
I know.
interesting.
We gotta have a sense of humor here.
Ice rink, will take up the whole ice rink.
Exactly, it'll be no
Put 'em
room
on
to skate.
skates.
Skate underneath the
But you could put, you know, replicas underneath the ice, so you're skating around, you could see all the different, you know, the Jefferson ground sloth and the bison and the mastodon, and they could all,
There you go back there, Mr. Developer. Yeah, just some more cost. Okay, other comments?
There's one other thing I'd like to bring up. So it's been brought up before, but where we're at is rented on a year-to-year basis. And recently the landlord was showing our space to somebody who wanted to rent the office space above and where we're at. So a concern I have is that if this space gets rented from us, where are we gonna go? You know, we see 30,000 people a year. My education programs are skyrocketing. I have teachers calling me all the time. I have a group of kids from Vail coming to see me after we close for the season because they don't have cool fossils in Vail, so they have to come to us. So that's definitely a concern I have as to what will happen to the discovery. And that's my main concern, you know, not me, not Snowmass Discovery, but that this fossil find has a place in the community that it deserves. So that's the last thing I'd
We'd
like
like
to
to
say.
know what's going to happen with the mall to begin with.
I
but
know.
That's another.
That's exactly. Thank
I
you.
think Arnie's
Thank you,
had,
Stephanie.
Arnie, your hand went up. Now we'll talk about walk back in history.
Thank you.
Wow.
Well,
Let me get you some water right quick. I'm sorry.
our days on council
Scotch
together.
in our water.
I don't think you have to call the fire department quite yet, unless somebody starts throwing things at me for
Good to see
an
you, Arnie.
ambulance service. I've kind of studiously avoided appearing before council on some various topics for the last several years for various reasons. But you asked about what's the community vibe. Now, of course, you know, I'm just a member of the community. I've been here a long time, going on 25, 26 years, something like that. I was at the dig when it was being dug. I was there. I saw them. I touched it. It was fascinating. It was wonderful. I can't tell you if the next generation of kids are going to find a scintilla of interest in seeing the Discovery Center for a very good reason. And that is this thing we call a cell phone, which, as any of you have either children or grandchildren or at least seen somebody, they're constantly looking at, and they almost don't know what reality is today. I just don't know whether it's going to be something that the kids are going to want to see. I'd love to see the town have a building that could do some things with, like have a center, have some music, have some places like that. But if you want to measure the sense of the community, I think, Madam Mayor, you hit upon it. I don't know that it's the property tax. I don't know if it's the sales tax. I can't tell you what tax it is, but the people of the community, at least those people that I've talked to, and I talked to one just a little bit ago at the post office who's sitting here, the issue is cost. And I'll tell you what brought me out today. Opened the paper this morning, and of course we really know how the accuracy of the reporting in some newspapers is, and I opened it up, and here I see a discussion about whatever the name of the organization was going to be. It seems a little confusing whatever it was. Wanted $700,000 from the town. That brought me here. That's insane. You know, and I had an awakening when I hear that it isn't going to cost the town anything to operate that building for 10 years, you suggest. No water, no gas, no electricity, cost. That East, West, whatever the group is going to foot that bill. Cool. Then everybody, and that should be disseminated into the community. But to give $700,000 to anybody is really what brings out the discussion I had today. My discussion, the discussion I've had with a whole number of people. Sell the building. That would be the reason. For this town to operate anything, any business, you don't do so good. You're not business people in that sense. You run a town. And by the way, talking about putting a restaurant in there that you might run is another insane thing. By the way, how well have the restaurants in Base Village done? There's 2 of them you can't even keep in business. There's a coffee shop that went out of business. Not sure we can all talk about the reasons and so forth, but they're not there anymore. So I don't want to see the town get into the business of trying to run businesses. That's why I think the idea that was proposed, as long as you don't give them $700,000, was probably a good one. Let them run the businesses. Let there be a Discovery Center, if that's what we decide. Let the Discovery Center figure out how they're going to make the cases for the fossils. This is your space. Here it is, right here. For 10 years, you don't have to pay lights. You don't have to pay water. You don't have to pay CAM. You don't have to pay electricity. You got a freebie. Now, can you raise enough money to get the cases done, to get the signs done, to put up the fixtures inside? If you can't, then maybe you're really not viable, and I wouldn't know that. But I think the community wants to see the town not put money in, not be obligated, and not run anything but the town business. And that is not the town business. So that would be where I think I sit and where I at least feel that some of the town vibe is at. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnie.
Thank you, Arnie.
Anyone else? Yeah, please come up.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Chris Faison. You should know I'm not a member of the Snowmass community, although I've lived in the valley for 42 years now. I was one of the lucky teachers on the dig. I was there for 10 years. 10 years, 10 days.
I was going to say, oh,
I
that's
found
wonderful.
Ziggy's skull. I got lucky. I come to you with a bit of fear and a bit of real excitement. First of all, let's go on the negative side. If what was just said about the possibility of Discovery Center losing that space before something else is created, in other words, if Discovery is mothballed, I think that's it. I really do. I'd like to pick up on something you said, Bill. If at some point some of you will go to Alexandria, Minnesota website, they, in the last 3 or 4 years, have built a maritime museum for dinosaur boats, which used to be built in Alexandria. There are different kinds of rowboats and sailboats. They have coupled this museum with a welcome center. And I don't know, maybe it's part of the chamber, I'm not sure. But the point is, people come in to this center to get information. Oh my gosh, here's this maritime museum. So they get traffic they're not expecting. So just picking up on that idea a little bit. Obviously, I'm biased about this dig, having been there. I don't want to, in respect to what you said, I don't want to go there in terms of why this is so important, except that I think this is part of Snowmass's soul. I really do. I think you've got an amazing opportunity, and I'm glad I'm not a council member. So thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chris.
Anyone else? Okay. 501c3. I'm taking some notes here.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah,
while you're
yeah,
doing that?
yeah.
I think I would like to address Arnie's comments because I think it's worthwhile because we really don't know what's coming down the pike. We don't know what kids are going to be interested in, what the next generation is really going to buy into. But I think, one thing that I really, when I was in Squaw Valley, I mean, it poured rain. Like, we had thunder, lightning, snow, sleet. I mean, the weather is changing. I mean, our ski season doesn't start, until much later. It's going much longer. I mean, there's stuff going on that we just don't understand. But climate change is real, and whether you really, buy into that it's man-made or it's not, it's a reality. And these creatures that we're dragging out of Ziegler didn't deal with it very well. And hopefully we can learn from their experience and improve upon it so we can survive as we're going forward, because climate change is really real. And I think and education is it's going to be such an important part of where we go in the future. We really should be part of our tourism business to educate people, to talk about current issues and where we're headed. I mean, I have a buddy who's he's a PhD from MIT. He was designing carbon fiber door panels and helicopter panels. And right now, he is retrofitting school buses to go into low-income neighborhoods to teach kids who don't have the opportunity to go to preschool. I mean, education is paramount to what we've got going on in our world today. And I think that this whole discovery, the Ice Age find, it just allows us to start that conversation about climate change. It just opens that door, just cracks it open so we can start to have those discussions, because I think that it will be the defining characteristic of our generation. And if we are on the front foot of talking about climate change, and we're bringing in conferences and we're talking about what's going on in the world, we have TED Talks, we have, you know, all these really inspiring lectures that go on, then we have a real component to our community that goes beyond skiing or riding the coaster. I'm glad somebody brought that up. The Alpine coaster just, you know, topped $1 million. So there's a real legitimate argument for other things to do in Snowmass beyond, you know, people that are physically active. I mean, it would be great if we were all in that case, but it's just not reality. And so we really have to provide our guests with things to do. The Discovery Trail, I think, is going to be a great thing for people to do. Hopefully our Snowmass Arts Advisory Board will follow through on this swing, you know, that swing, you know, between the tusks. Those are the kinds of things that are really interesting and I think compelling for people who come to our town. And I just think that climate change has got to be part of that conversation.
So any other comments? Yeah, Don?
Don Schuster, Asthma Skiing Company. And I guess I would encourage you to wait and let Andy deliver to Clint,
Yep.
you know, sort of an idea as we move forward to that, but that's not why I'm here. I wanted to comment on a question that came up, was can the bones that are being delivered live outside? And the answer, you know, John Rigney and I have been talking about this for the last 2 months. He's pushed out to the Denver Museum and so forth, and as currently constituted, the bones that are going to be delivered back to the Water and Sand District cannot live outside, but the Discovery Group has been pushing back hard to see if that can be course corrected during the construction component so the Mastodon could actually live outside and be, you know, a public kind of art piece to go along with that. So I just wanted to let you know that's where it is. John, I know, has been trying to push that it, you know, if it can't live inside because it's too big, could it live outside, you know, and be something that the community can see all the time? So.
Thank you for the answer. Yes, sir, please come up. Thank you, Don.
I'm actually using my iPhone for a productive purpose, but maybe that's because I'm not 13 years old.
Welcome.
My name is Art Burrows. I've lived here in the area for about 37 years. I do think one of the reasons that our community in Aspen has had such a good economic vitality for so many decades is because we have a diversity of experiences. We've had the Institute, the music festival, a lot of sporting events. And it's because we have this tremendous diversity. So I think it's an opportunity for Snowmass to develop a reason to stay here, and a reason to have symposiums on climate, a reason to engage all the schools and have traveling people come here and experience this extraordinary attribute that we have here, which we should not lose. And I think that the big issue is, can it pay for itself? I think you have made some really good points in that there is property tax intolerance. But if we make all our decisions based on only property tax intolerance, I think we're making a bad decision. I think it can be programmed, but it is a matter of having a diverse amount of programming and keeping that facility utilized and active and programmed and paying for itself. I think it's a really important opportunity, and as a community, I think we would do well to step up and take the challenge and figure out a way for this to pay for itself and to generate some revenue. But to do that, we have to take a little bit of risk. If we don't take that risk, we'll never attain that reward that is out there. So for those reasons, very much in favor, even though I would say a fiscal conservative. I think it's important that we figure out a way to program this in a diverse way with partnerships, because we have a lot of people that are interested, and I think we could make this work financially, but it's just going to take some work and some vision, and thanks.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? So let me summarize kind of the next steps of what I'm hearing. So it appears from the comments that have been made that there's potentially two paths that we should consider. One is the town take the ownership and town structure kind of what it might be, what the financial, the bottom line performance, all of those types of issues, and it would more than likely come out of the tourism department. Go the leadership. In terms of the restaurant, this town doesn't belong running a restaurant, but you know, it could be an operating lease and what have you. So that town needs to work on that. Number two, the other option, the path, would be for a 501c3. And back to the Snowmass Discovery. It's very important to what I'm hearing is that the Snowmass Discovery be, if you will, front and center into that building. So that has to be a given. Two would be looking for the proposal from East-West, or whatever that might be. If it is what we saw before, it begins to hit all the marks, because they had Snowmass Discovery, it had some nexus of virtual reality, it had a variety of pop-up opportunities and black box and what have you. So I would suggest those are the two directions that I think we should consider. I'm not in favor of...
That second direction, you kind of said 501c3, and then you said
Yeah, then you change. Looking at the
East-West.
proposal from
So I just wrote down an outside organization. We don't know what it exactly looks like running it.
Well, I think it'd be important, the East-West was a 501c3. That is what they were proposing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still accurate.
I don't either. And that's why, if it's an outside organization, I think we can see what that looks like, but kind of an internal opportunity and an external opportunity is
Yes.
kind of what my notes are.
That's exactly where we're going.
Okay.
So you mentioned two directions. The third direction, which
So-
was talked about, would be south.
Well,
you know,
and
what-
Nexus, so, I mean, are we,
And I think in my mind that Nexus is that external, that kind of outside organization. Where are they at? What can they do? And I'm seeing the face, but I mean, I'm just trying to figure out. In
What
their
I
business
didn't like
proposal-
about Nexus, it did not have Snowmass Discovery. It had a little tiny virtual reality.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not working for me.
As I said earlier, you know, within a year or year and a half, virtual reality is going to change again. It'll be, you know, you never know what the technologies
700
around the
2,000,
corner are
but-
going to be, you know. And once they've seen it once, so they're going to come back, you know. First of all, I want to let everybody know who's supporting Discovery. I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah, we all
Please
are.
don't get me wrong. Like I said, I spent every single day when the bones were being dug up making sure I would go to the water and sand and saw what was on the tables. My wife at the time was doing a flat Stanley thing for her great niece, and we would take Flat Leanna, we called her, and we would take pictures of Flat Leanna on the bones every single day. So we were looking to see what bones we could put Flat Leanna on when that was happening. I actually applied for the dig and was turned down, and I used to be an educator, and I'm not anymore, so that I was kind of upset they didn't pick me, so you were very fortunate you got
Now
picked.
it's payback?
So now it's payback, you sons of a... No, anyway, I just want you to know, I am a fan of it, okay? But I'm just not a fan of the town putting that much risk on the community. So that's how I feel.
I have a question, and maybe Stephanie can answer it better than other people in the room. But I mean, if you do go into that space down there, and we also want to be able to use it as a flex space for music or whatever else is going on for, you know, Aspen Science to come in and do a pop-up or ACES. I mean, is that realistic? Because like if you go in the Discovery Center now, you know, it's not like there's a ton of stuff. I mean, I guess you could move some things around, but if you're talking about getting these cases to put the bones in, I'm just wondering, how will the flexibility be?
It has to be flex space to begin with, that's one thing for sure. And we saw what it was gonna cost if you built out the whole thing, and I don't remember which study it was. It was pretty significant in
Right.
terms of capital campaign and a fee charged for
There was that
entrance.
like theater
Yes,
sort of thing
Yeah,
in the
there's-
back.
yeah.
I mean,
That's not what I'm thinking about.
no. I mean, I'm thinking kind of like a glorified space of what you have now that allows for bigger ceilings and you to do more, and obviously
Right,
like
right.
better lighting and you not being kicked out and, you know, those types of things. And then also that space that, I mean, when Tom had shown us the drawings of like that sphere or the theater kind of type feel, I mean, I just want to make sure that it can be flexible, because I think that really, Clint, to me is a priority. Because I'm a huge fan of Discovery, and I think that it has great value in the community, but I also think that what I hear from a lot of people is that we need to have these other elements
Right.
as well. Because really in Snowmass, there's no space for that. I mean, you know.
So I don't even see Discovery running the building. It would be tourism department if the town takes it. If it's east-west, that whole proposal was a 501c3.
But in my mind, the flex space would be that upstairs space that was kind of dedicated as a performance center, or, to me, that's where
Right.
the opportunity is to get the music or the lectures or the whatever.
Right, and I think that that's important. I mean, I think, I'm just want to be clear that that's what we need. And I think it satisfies a lot of different interests if you do it that way.
I
So,
agree.
the criteria that I've kind of, in my notes, the criteria that Char's trying to gather, and please let me know if I forgot something or included something that shouldn't be, would be, make sure that no new taxes are needed to create and operate it, that the operations need to be ramped up reasonably, that whatever's in there needs to be impactful. It can't be one and done, that might be the same thing. We need to manage the risk to the best of our ability for the town. The space needs to be flexible, and we gotta figure out how Discovery, or I should say the find, is included.
Mhm.
Discovery, I don't know if they're interchangeable, I guess.
I think you'd have to write that up and get it up, but I think you hit all the key points. So how soon? 2 weeks?
Oh, shit, a day or two, I'm sure.
Next.
Honestly, I think, I don't think this is that far off from where we were kinda heading. I think, I don't have a good answer for you, other than to tell you, we'll make it a priority, and we'll work with everybody to see what we can do and how we can make this happen.
And the question would be if we have something coming from east-west.
Yeah, and if, as I understand it, it's close to that Village Hall concept. I think, you know, that if you remember, that Village Hall was a restaurant, and flex space on
yeah,
top, and
yeah.
kind of a game room on the bottom, and if the idea is, all right, let's ramp things up and take reasonable steps to begin with, there's 5,000 feet roughly on the bottom. Do you double the current Ice Age to 2,500 feet or 3,000 and have 2,000 for games? Or these are things that we could work through. I don't have an
That's
answer.
detailed.
But if the direction is, hey, find this kind of the middle ground between all these ideas, I bet we can come up with something decent.
So, east-west, if you have a proposal this week, how soon could it be on a town council agenda for discussion?
I mean, if we get something this week, I'm sure you could. Next week, you've got the center, and I don't have my agendas in front of me, but you guys are the boss. You can put it on whenever you want. How quickly we have something substantive to talk about, I can't answer that question.
Sooner the better. How about, Alyssa, you fine? Sooner the better?
Yeah, I like sooner the better. I was just pulling up the draft agenda.
That's what I was doing too.
The regular meeting on the 16th, it said Rio Grande encroachment, updated Pickens County hazard mitigation, Nexus letter of agreement, question mark. But I know you also have center on that, but it's not on this one.
So, I mean, the nexus was this discussion, so the center, you guys have a resolution coming before you. I can't imagine that taking too long, 'cause you got pretty far, but maybe that's an hour. The Rio,
Rio
Gra-
Grande encouragement's not that
I don't
long.
think that's actually
that-
gonna happen. I think that got bumped.
That got bumped.
And then,
The tax issue
the,
for wrapped up.
the hazard mitigation is probably 30 minutes, I'm guessing. At most, it's an update, just so you guys know what's going on. So, yes, with that quick rundown, I bet we could squeeze some stuff in here. It's up to you all how much time you want to spend on it.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. It's 10 till 6. I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. Good discussion. Keep the letters coming. And from the community, let us know what you're thinking.
Thank you
And
guys.
so I'm gonna just gonna call it an update on 6, because I don't know what it's gonna look
It's
like.
exactly.
I'm just gonna give you an update.
Anything else we need? Well, this was a single agenda item, so we'll call it. And we don't need a
Don't
motion
need-
for
don't
adjournment
need-
because it's a work session. Okay, thank you all for coming. We'll turn off the TV.